The Cheating Death Podcast is a comedy podcast providing objective information about anything and everything under the sun. We are not political nor religious. We are merely analytical and a bit contagious. Viewer discretion is advised. On today's episode of the Cheating Death Podcast, we once again take a trip across the pond to Epsom, Surrey in the United Kingdom, specifically the Halton area, as we explore the Long Grove Hospital. We also answer another couple of questions from the mailbag. We provide you with a new joke of the episode, our top 5 favorite British breakfasts, an Annihilation Announcement, and of course, dear listener, there is so much more. By now, you know what to do. Grab yourself a coffee, put your feet up, grab yourself a warm blanket, and let us tell you how you can cheat death. Willkommen, meine Freunde. Guten Morgen, guten Tag und eine gute Nacht. Ist deine Reisende und deine Allesfresser, deine Ausländer und deine Cleric of Chaos. Today, dear listener, we are actually going to head right back over across the pond where we were before. We were in Lancashire previously. Today we head on over to Surrey in the United Kingdom, more specifically the Halton area of Epsom. Yes, dear listener, today we are covering the very controversial hospital known as the Long Grove Asylum. Now, when we take into account the British system versus the Canadian versus the American systems, you have to understand that the British services are provided by what is known as the NHS, or the National Health Service. This is a nationalized medicine similar to how Canada performs their particular form of socialized medicine delivery. Now, when we take into consideration exactly what led to the creation of the Long Grove Hospital, this was already a filled area with 3 other sanitariums. However, it was determined that there was need for a 4th plan to allow for more individuals to be healed, to be taken in and given treatment for their particular ailments. For you see, the peak of construction began on 1905 and concluded within a 2-year period from that particular construction date. The Halton Light Railway was even constructed. This was an absolutely tremendous feat, given the nature that it was used to construct and transport building materials. Also, later on, this same railway would be used to facilitate the transfer of medical facility professionals and such useful, much-needed supplies. Of course, we take into consideration exactly how the facility looked, the absolute beauty, the architectural majesty of the Long Grove Asylum cannot be understated. The main site itself employed around 1,100 men recruited from London and brought down to Waterloo daily. Now, if you take into consideration exactly how much people were compensated for this at that time, they were given approximately 4 shillings, 20 pence return. This was, of course, considered to be a very decent, earnable living at the time. The Long Grove Asylum formally opened in 1907, and over the course of its history would become a new endeavor for those in whom were experiencing significant mental and emotional duress to try their hand at recovery and rehabilitation. Note that in 1907, when it opened, it was an independent institution for all that was which brought on by the overseers and the commissioners in lunacy, which was a crew, team, structured, organized setting, a collaboration of individuals from across the Epsom cluster of hospitals within Surrey and within Epsom proper. One of the reasons why the facility has such renown is because one of the former patients of the hospital includes a man by the name of George Pelham, a man who survived the sinking of the Titanic, and a Polish violin prodigy named Joseph Hasid and Ronnie Cray were all inundated with nothing more than the same types of treatments that the regular civilians would have been given. We take into account and consideration exactly what type of facility Long Grove Asylum was. Was it a secure facility? Was it for the criminally insane? There you see, dear listener, the facility in and of itself were for those in whom were completely mentally disconnected from reality, those in whom had fallen on not only hard times, but had also lost all of their mental faculties. This was not, I repeat, this was not a facility used to house the criminally insane specifically. This was an overall used facility to where people were welcomed to come and try to heal their very wounds, their maladies, their very concerns. Understand as well, dear listeners, that of course you get an asylum. You fill it with patients. Those patient numbers, even though you are only supposed to be taking in, you are now counting numbers 1122, numbers 1123. You ask yourself, how is it that anyone is going to heal in these conditions? Well, when you take into consideration the decline and redevelopment of how asylums were viewed and how they were overseen, the goal was never really ultimately by the end of any of these asylums to fix people. It was merely to house them so they could no longer be a burden to society. The administration and staff acted as glorified babysitters in these constructs, glorified Leicesters. And you look into the history of different asylums, not only across England and Europe, but also across North America. And you yourself, dear listener, will see that there is absolutely no difference between how people eventually become to be treated. You enter as a patient, you either leave in a body bag, or you leave still completely insane. Only very rarely did people leave these facilities completely cured. And understand, dear listener, that Long Grove Asylum was part of a larger block of the Epsom cluster, attached to the Horton Hospital, the Manor Hospital, the St. Ebba's Hospital, and the West Park Hospital. All of these hospitals were absorbed by the National Health Service in 1948, And before this, the county council had been responsible for the overseeing and administration of tasks, of supplies, of rubrics, of curriculums for handling these patients. The Horton Epsom cluster was a very large, expansive facility chain filled with 5 absolutely massive, large hospitals and a central waterworks and power station. And note, dear listeners, that after the introduction of care in the community in the 1980s, we are led to believe that this was the reason that the cluster was reducing in size and was ultimately, in Long Grove's case, closed in 1992 because there was no longer a need, there was no longer a purpose for it. However, individuals in whom have done investigative work on the, quote, care in the community campaign have revealed that the goal was never to do better than the asylums did. It was merely to replace them because they were costing far too much money. Dear listener, Long Grove Asylum is absolutely one of the most beautiful facilities in Surrey, and you can still go and view the buildings today. What I do not advise is I do not advise that you take a bell, for it is quite possible that the ghosts of insane years past will come and they will consume you. Thank you for tuning in today. Take care of yourselves and each other. This is your news anchor, the Cleric of Chaos, and this is your Annihilation Announcement. Past couple of episodes, we have dived across the pond to understand furthermore exactly what the British did to handle those in whom were mentally incapacitated. It cannot be understated that as time goes on, as asylums have closed, and as the overall psychiatric health system globally has expounded and expanded in reach and in scientific research, asylums and mental facilities now look like nothing more than hospital boxes with calamity doom brought straight to your room. You understand, dear listener, that in time, each and every single person shall be faced with something that is going to shake them to their very core, to their very being. Each and every single person's brain is wired differently. Every single person's soul is illustrated in a different color and in a different canvas, but it is to be noted and articulated that over the course of time, human beings as a whole, as we proceed through this course of society, are facing a lot more trepidation, a lot more hardship than anyone in human history has ever done. So if you find yourself feeling a little bit down because your 80,000 work tasks and your 20,000 leisure tasks do not cohesively function together, do not get yourself down. It is not your fault. The time that you take with all of the effort that you put in with everything that you try, you are doing your best. You are fighting with everything that you can in a system that is designed to squeeze you out and is designed to end you before your natural time comes. So, dear listener, do this one thing. Fight. This has been your news anchor, the Cleric of Chaos, and this is your Annihilation Announcement. At the top of today's program, we promised you a list of the top 5 favorite British breakfasts. And of course, without further ado, let us dive right in. Coming in at number 5, we have fried mushrooms. Coming in at number 4, we have back bacon. Coming in at number 3, we have haggis. Coming in at number 2, we have potato bread. And of course, coming in at number 1, we have lawn sausage and black pudding. What are your top 5 favorite British breakfasts? Email us at thecheatingdeathpodcast@gmail.com. Right, so today's joke has been brought to you by the Cleric of Chaos. To the man in the wheelchair who stole my prized baseball cap, you can hide, but you cannot run. And welcome, dear listeners, to the second rendition of the mailbag portion of the program this week. And we have a couple that we are really looking forward to get to today. So, without further ado, let us grab the envelope opener and let us dive right in. Today's first question comes from Preston in Manchester, England. Ooh, talk about coincidental. What a lovely time to answer this question. Preston asks, "Hello, Cheating Death Podcast. Long-time listener, first-time emailer." I love how you adapted the caller to email. That's very well done. Well made. My question to you is, have you ever been to England? And if so, what is your favorite part of England? I'm so sorry, Preston. I don't mean to laugh at your question. But England is one of my absolute most treasured places to travel, not only specifically to the United Kingdom proper, but also to Scotland, to Glasgow, to Edinburgh, to a lot of places within the continent and to within the proper itself, that beautiful little island, such a cornucopia of absolute beautiful treasure and absolutely tremendous culture. Like, you try to explain to someone the difference between England, Scotland, and Wales and Northern Ireland, and they're going to have a complete conniption. But yes, I have been to England before, and quite frankly, before I moved back to Canada, it was one of the areas that I was planning on settling down, specifically actually outside of Lancashire, Gloucestershire, or just outside of Surrey. But yes, I have, and if in the event that I find myself heading back over there in the next few years, we absolutely must have a tea. Question number two. Question number two. It comes to us from Amy, who dwells in Tallahassee, Florida. Oh, Tallahassee. There's a nice little place there. Amy asks, "Hello, Cheating Death Podcast. Wonderful episode last week. Thank you so very much for taking time to address Florida State Hospital." Well, you're welcome. I'm not entirely sure as to whether or not that's a compliment or whether or not that's sarcastic, but you are most welcome. Florida State Hospital was an interesting episode to do. My question to you is, what element of Florida do you find most intriguing? You mentioned a couple of things in the podcast about how you found it to be a very beautiful, sun-bathed place. That is a beautiful question. I'm not really sure. To be entirely forthright and direct, I love a lot of things about Florida. A lot of things. One being that that's where essentially every retired person in North America goes to die. So I know that in the vast majority of the cities, I'm not going to be dealing with a bunch of clandestine teenagers trying to make trouble for the establishment. No. But one of the things that I actually find most beautiful about Florida isn't just the retirement element, isn't just the constant sunshine, but it's the people. The people of Florida are absolutely astounding, hardworking, dedicated. Yes, of course, you have your Florida mans, you have your drug addicts, you have your people who have been on the beach and have taken in too much sun. But by and large, Florida is a very industrious and hardworking state, and I really look forward to coming back there once more. And our final question today. Let's see, which one? You know what? Let's go with this one. This question comes to us from Brian in Portland, Oregon. Now, if I understand, Portland, Oregon is on the far west side of the United States, beneath Washington State, above California, I think. Yeah, listeners, please correct me if I'm wrong. Please flame me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, Brian asks, and hello to you, Brian, and hello to Portland, Oregon. Brian asks, "Hello, Cheating Death Podcast. Long-time listener. Very happy that you are making so many programs and so many episodes about different topics. Thank you for all the time that you take. My question is this. Have you ever been to Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, or, please forgive me if I mispronounce this, Albuquerque? Albuquerque, New Mexico? Yeah. Have you ever been to Albuquerque, New Mexico is the last one there. No, I have not been to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, technically, if you want to be blunt, and I'd say technical, I drove past it, but I've never actually spent time in the city. Now, as far as Portland, Oregon goes, I have spent a couple of days there. Very beautiful, very quiet, very, very gray, I will say, in that matter. And if we're referring to Seattle, Washington, there have been moments in time where I have spent some time there as well, most specifically to watch some football games and to take in some Seattle Mariners games as a child. But yes, Seattle is a tremendous place. Portland is a nice place as well, and as is Albuquerque from what I hear. But that concludes the mailbag portion for this week, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to submit your question, you may do so at thecheatingdeathpodcast@gmail.com or leave a comment beneath whichever platform you're watching on. Long Grove Asylum has a litany of significant issues within the walls itself, for it is not exactly readable, you see, for many people whom were repatriated between their domicile, their full padded walls, the abyss, the loneliness, the desperation that the vast majority of the patients would experience is second to none than what would most experience in an asylum in a solo padded room. A weapon worst to wear on the mind and on the soul to weather the being into submission. Asylums, especially Long Grove, were absolutely no joke, dear listener, and it is up to you to ensure that your mental health is secure so you do not land yourself within a facility. Thank you for tuning in today, and take care of yourselves and each other. The Cheating Death Podcast is brought to you by Cleric of Chaos and Noch dem Leben CLDVZ. It is available on all podcasting platforms where all podcasts can be found. If you would like to support the program, you may do so at the links in the episode's description. We'd like to thank Hunter Collins and Ransom for their very generous donations to the Buy Me a Coffee Fund, and of course Carol for her donation to the Injury Support and Acquire First and Last Month's Rent Fund. If you'd like to support the program, you may do so at the links in the episode's description. You buy merch, we have a Cameo, we have a Buy Me a Coffee, we also have quite a few different options for you to choose. If you or anyone you know is experiencing psychiatric duress, is at danger of harming yourself or others, or is in a dangerous domestic violence situation, please contact any one of the local telephone numbers and toll-free numbers listed in the episodes and the podcast description. There is help, there is safety, and please make sure that you find it, because we care about you a great deal. Please follow the program at youtube.com/@clericofchaos. Like, share, and subscribe. Trying to get subscriber numbers up to 100 by the end of April. Hopefully we could do that. Also, if you would like to follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/weallcheatdeath and twitter.com/clericofchaos, it would be greatly appreciated. If you are looking at adopting a playful puppy or a cute kitten, please visit your local animal adoption rescue center. And dear listener, of course, we say once more, life is not a one-way street. It is a mutual give and take. It is a reciprocation to which adheres to every situation. Be kind to yourselves, and remember, we're pulling for you. We are all in this together.